Hello everyone, my name is Eric. I'm a limited licensed master social worker and psychotherapist. I've been working with children, youth, and adults for 10 years. On this week's episode of So You Want to Learn Psychology, we're taking a look at Sigmund Freud's Civilization and its Discontents. Freud has been massively criticized, and his theories have been boiled down so carelessly by modern psychology that when most people think of Freud, they just think, oh, he's the sex guy, right? It's a sad state of affairs when those of us whose passion is psychology can't bear to accept the truth and reality of his theories, and instead, evoke our primary defense of denial and regard hundreds of years of research, theory crafting, and practice as bullshit. People have real criticisms of Freud and psychoanalysis as a whole, as do I, but many so-called experts in mental health, of which lot I do not claim to be part of, simply do not know enough about Freud or psychoanalysis to regard his theories with such disdain. In fact, as I believe it is with every psychoanalytic author, the more deeply you read into the material, the more invariably you come to the conclusion that this is how things are. Nothing I've read from Freud, which admittedly isn't much, has come close to that realization, as in Civilization and its Discontents. In terms of its content, I would say that this work is more a philosophical critique rather than a psychological exploration of the individual mind, as you may have guessed by the title. At bottom, the book is about how our contemporary culture, our civilization, has made it its goal to suppress all forms of aggression, hostility, and violence, which it continuously fails to do. And as a result, the repression of the aggressive impulses in mankind gives rise to feelings of anxiety and guilt. I will touch on some of these insights throughout the video where I feel they're important, but to be honest, my primary takeaway from this book is not about anxiety, aggression, or guilt, but of how our culture has made humans into gods, and the psychological weight of responsibility that accompanies such incredible ascension. Mankind is proud of its exploits, and has a right to be, but men are beginning to perceive that all this newly won power over space and time, this conquest of forces of nature, this fulfillment of age-old longings, has not increased the amount of pleasure they can obtain in life, has not made them feel any happier. It prompts us to exclaim, is not then a positive pleasure, an unequivocal gain in happiness, to be able to hear, whenever I like, the voice of a child living hundreds of miles away, or to know directly a friend of mine arrives at his destination that he has come well and safely through the long and troublesome voyage? And is it nothing that a medical science has succeeded in enormously reducing the mortality of young children, the dangers of infection of woman in childbirth? Indeed, in very considerably prolonging the average length of human life? And there is still a long list one could add to these benefits that we owe to the much despised era of scientific and practical progress. If there were no railway to make light of the distance, my child would never have left home and I should not need the telephone to hear his voice. If there were no vessels crossing the ocean, my friend would have never embarked on his voyage and I should not need the telegraph to relieve my anxiety about him. And what do we gain by a long life when it is full of hardship and starved of joys, and so wretched that we can only welcome death as our deliverer? This book was published in 1930, almost 100 years ago, and yet we've come further in the last 50 years than all of the progress that we've made in the previous 2,000 all combined. We now have smartphones with unlimited access to the world's information. We can FaceTime our friends and family and see their faces and hear their voices in an instant from across the world. We can fly across oceans, we can shuttle to the moon, we can even let cars drive us, as dangerous as that might be. We can distract ourselves with limitless forms of entertainment from TV shows, sports, to virtual worlds. We can grow crops in environments that even nature would not allow. We can even decide whether we want to give birth to a boy or a girl. We are virtually gods ourselves, and this realization has created many psychological problems for human existence. All these possessions he has acquired through culture. Long ago, he formed an ideal conception of omnipotence and omniscience, which he embodied in his gods. Whatever seemed unattainable to his desires, or forbidden to him, he attributed to these gods. One may say, therefore, that these gods were the ideals of his culture. Future ages will produce further great advances in the realm of culture, probably inconceivable now, and will increase man's likeness to a god still more. But with the aim of our study in mind, we will not forget, all the same, that the human being of today is not happy with all his likeness to a god. Why does it seem impossible to reflect on the progress of human culture and not be content with how far we've come? Have we no gratitude? After all, we exist amongst an excess of material goods, services that make ensuring our survival a trivial concern, and enough distractions to keep us eternally preoccupied. I'll tell you why, and Freud said it himself. Because all of this progress, despite elevating civilization to heights once thought only achievable by God, feels like it has all been for nothing. I choose the words "feels like" very carefully, because with respect to the advancements made in human culture, and to give them their due respect, we still feel like they don't mean much to us. Hell, we don't even give it 1 minute of reflection each day before we decide to give all kinds of emotional power to the mildly annoying lady in the drive-thru who messed up our morning coffee. Do you see where I'm going with this? We are gods now. We exercised our might over nature for the last 2,000 years, and now we sit atop the throne looking down at all of our achievements with a feeling of somber nothingness. Is this why the rich take their own lives? We've collectively accumulated all of this shit, and for what? We clearly don't value it because we don't even have any conscious gratitude for it. We seek happiness, not safety or security. If we did, we might rephrase our declaration to reflect our current goals: liberty, capital, and the pursuit of eternal life. Capital plays a massive role in this equation. Throughout recent history, capitalism and industrialism have made themselves the primary movers of cultural and social progress. Even thinking back 50 years ago to 1975, people were excited about the prospects of the future. Medicine was improving, technology was improving, goods were becoming more available and desirable, the ceiling had not yet been reached. Now that ceiling is cracking under the pressure of too much progress. In 2025, we don't have to worry about material well-being like previous generations did. We don't have to grow our crops during the summer and store them for the winter. We just go to the grocery store and we buy them even if they're out of season. We're gods. Don't know something? Don't bother going to the library. Just ask Google and get your answer from AI in 5 seconds. No need to be passionate about education or study. Don't even bother learning the facts or formulas. Google's got you covered. We're gods. We're fastly approaching the arrival of robots with feelings, and despite this progress, we will inevitably enslave them and make them do our dirty work. It's coming, and I can see the robot rights activists prepping their pitchforks. All of this just to come out and spoil the plot. We are the gods now. And with this new realization comes the dreadful recognition that our civilization, up until this point, has been built by and for humans, not for gods. And so what do gods concern themselves with in all forms of mythology and religion? Why, human affairs, of course. It's almost as if being a god is so boring that they must entertain themselves with the likes of mere mortals. This is where we find ourselves today. I'm afraid we've reached the actual limit in terms of human progress. We've hit the ceiling. At this point, work provides us no meaning because it's either so easy or so trivial that there's no passion in it. Unless you're still working to uncover the cure for cancer, there's literally nothing new to discover, or so it seems. Any job you do can be ascribed to picking up where somebody else left off. There are no more brand new discoveries or inventions anymore. Lots of old ideas and concepts are just repackaged into new and modern garb, and any new creations or inventions only serve to make our already simple life even simpler. They exist solely to extract capital from people, regardless of whether they have a little or a lot. As Freud says in the book, who has the courage to dispute this in the face of all the evidence of his own life and history? Now that there is no upward mobility left, Now that human beings will simply replace one another as a cog in the capitalist and industrialist machine, it is more necessary than ever to revise our ethical expectations for human existence. We have become gods, and we bathe in excess, and yet we still lack the most meaningful things of all: contentment, happiness, purpose. I should imagine that as long as virtue is not rewarded in this life, that ethics will preach in vain. This is a sobering warning that if our aims do not change moving forward, we will be doomed to continue the process of civilization, despite having already attained what we set out to achieve. Once you get what you want from your hard work and effort, is the result ever enough? Or do you neurotically go back and continue to work towards the same ends? In our culture, we do this. We produce billions of things every day, despite not needing them. I had a revelation this year while at a concert. Bands go on tour and need hundreds of thousands of t-shirts made for a cross-country tour. That's hundreds of thousands of shirts with just one graphic. And then there are the hoodies, the hats, and so on. Millions of fabric shirts made for one small occasion. And that happens every day. Does the earth really need more band tees? We could probably just stop now. Anyway, that's a humorous metaphor for a much more serious problem. Does the ease of our existence make living life trivial, leading to a lack of fulfillment and unhappiness? Is all that's left for us existential anxiety, waiting for our inevitable demise? Because even for gods, the only real fear is the fear of death itself. We killed our gods and turned them into cultural ideals. Now, our cultural ideals of generations past are killing us back. We're paying for our progress. Did we imagine that life would be so one-sided as to give us all of the good with none of the bad? Here's where I offer a bit of insight into how to reframe and set out on a path to meaning despite living in this detestable, technologically advanced culture. Focus on improving the relationships you have with the people around you. They are all that really matter in this world. You can have everything you could ever ask for and still lack the emotional connection that human beings need to live healthy psychological lives. Fix the relationships that are broken. Apologize to those you've hurt, or be willing to listen to those who have done you wrong and are trying to make amends. Spend time with your family, those you love, or those you have left. Don't consider yourself a loser because you don't have whatever our culture has decided is a symbol of independence or responsibility. Paying for rent for an overpriced apartment that you do not own is not a sign of responsibility or independence. It's a sign of how far you've succumbed to the delusion that living alone, independent from your family, is preferable and healthy, despite the longings for the past and the cultural custom of coming home for the holidays. It's a sign that you have fallen victim to the belief that our culture's values are right and healthy, and it's only you who is to blame for not measuring up to society's collective standards. If living at home with your parents all of your life is good and helpful for your financial situation and theirs, then by all means, that should be a measure of success in this age. Many people are struggling to make ends meet, working jobs they hate just to keep a roof over their heads, despite the fact that we could house every homeless person in North America for a fraction of the price that we spend on wars across the world. Keep in touch with those you love. Be willing to help in any way you can. And as long as your relationships with others are above accumulating things, you will ensure yourself a rich and meaningful existence. This is the ethic of the New Age. But before we can get there, we need to break free from the belief that the accumulation of material or of making life easier is the equivalent to progress or happiness. That concludes this episode of So, You Want to Learn Psychology? I hope you enjoyed. This topic really hit home with a lot of people, and I know this because I have worked with many people who feel that their life has no direction because it has no purpose and therefore it has no meaning. If you feel this way, you're not alone, and it's my guess that in the years to come, you will not be in the minority. Speak up. Form or join communities of like-minded people whose goal it is to break free of this toxic culture that we live in. Let's use the power we have to shape our reality into something we're proud of, regardless of what other people may think. I hope 2026 is more kind to you than 2025 has been. Subscribe to Psych.osophy and Psych.osophy Gaming for more content in the year to come. Thanks again for your support. Until next time.